together at the mountaintop, champions of college football.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a midweek drop of the Coach and the Couch Potato. As always, I am Jeremy the Couch Potato. Opposite side of the screen, we got Coach Slater. What is going on, sir?
Oh, not much, man. Got a sick kid right now, so we had to take a half day from work. Kids are way tougher than us, dude. Like,
yeah,
she's got 101 fever. She doesn't feel well. She doesn't look good. And I'm like, hey, how you feeling? I'm fine. I'm like, oh, okay. You want me to leave you alone? Yep. Okay. All right. See you later.
Jesus, Dad.
Yeah. So, but no, man, everything's good, man. How's things your way?
Good. Yeah, we got word today, actually yesterday. Jaden has to have an MRI on his wrist.
Man. Okay.
Sounds like probably no sectionals, so we got to cross fingers that the boys can get it done and earn that natty berth.
Yeah.
So hopefully he might be able to be back by then. So, yeah, it sucks, but, that's what I told him. I go, I get it. It's frustrating. It's annoying, but the human body's complex. So
yes, it is.
And you only get one crack at it. You're 19 years old. So we would rather get you right now than have to deal with it, when you're our age. So,
yeah.
Other than that, pretty low key week. We told you guys we'd hop on here if something came out, and Matt Patricia, is Buckeye.
Yeah, man.
Very, very, very polarizing hire. We've made no bones about how funny we think the Ohio State fan base can be.
Oh, yeah.
We are in peak Ohio State fan base mode again. I've seen so many people just shredding this hire.
Yeah.
For a multitude of reasons. Matt Patricia, obviously most known as a New England Patriot. He was with them for like 13 years, 2004 to 2017, something like that.
Yeah, he was with them for a long time.
In multiple capacities. 2 of those years, he was coaching the defense that they won Super Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
1 year, led the league in scoring. And, then as a lot of Belichick guys did, got jobs, goes to the Lions as the head coach. Doesn't really work out there. Goes to the Eagles in an assistant coach role. Takes over midseason, with a struggling defense.
Yeah.
But at that point, you're just a scapegoat. I don't put any stock into the Eagles stuff. And let's be honest, the Eagles corners were bad last year. There's a reason they drafted so many guys in the secondary. So, going back to New England, though, we'll kind of start there. Obviously being a defensive coach, I'm going to punt that to you. First impressions of Matt Patricia.
Yeah, man. Listen, anytime you can get somebody from that Belichick coaching tree, I think is a win. Bill Belichick is obviously the GOAT, like the greatest coach of all time, arguably the greatest defensive coach of all time. Learned from Bill Parcells. So there's just so much knowledge that Bill Belichick has and that he passed on to Coach Patricia. Like you said, being the defensive coordinator for 2 of those Super Bowl runs, the third Super Bowl that he won, he was a linebackers coach. So he's coaching the outside backers as well. So he had like Teddy Bruschi, he had Vrabel in the room, he had Willie McGinnis. Like he had some like just absolute studs in that room that all respected him. So when it comes to like his pedigree, I think he is a very good coach. He's a very multiple coach when it comes to his schemes. He is a 3-4 guy. That's what the Patriots were. But if they need to be a 4 down front, they'll go do that. One of the things that I like about him most, since we'll go ahead and kind of touch on scheme here a little bit. Matt Patricia will do whatever it takes to win. And to me, that bodes well for something that Buckeye fans have been clamoring for, and we saw it a little bit more this year on defense, was more rotation. So if that means, hey, Jermaine Matthews, you've been playing on the outside all season long. This week, their best receivers in the slot. We need you in the slot. Lorenzo, we're going to put you outside. Those are the type of things that he will do to make sure that they win. Find the best matchup for the defense, right? And take away what the offense perceives as their best matchup. And so I think for guys like Arvell Reese, for guys like CJ Hicks, I think you're going to see them used in creative ways so that Matt Patricia can find those one-on-one mismatches and so that we can have an advantage. And that's just one of the things I love about his scheme, man. He is a matchup-based guy, and his game plans are geared towards whatever it takes to stop the opposing team, not what I think is going to work out of our scheme, right? Out of our playbook, these are the things we need to run. Like, he gets so creative that, hey, if there's something that we got to think outside the box to stop this team, like, we're going to go do it. And so I think that's great, man. I really do. And the more and more I've researched today, and we were just talking about before we came on here, like, the more excited I get about the idea of the creativeness and the innovative, nature that he has, that I think, guys like CJ Hicks, Caleb Downs, all these guys that that are going to be rotational guys, like, he's going to find ways to maximize the talent that the Buckeyes have.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things, you hit on some of the studs they had in New England, and, as far as linebackers go, and they always had really good defensive linemen, but they never had, outside of Devin McCourty, Ty Law, but they never had like a true great secondary.
Yeah.
But the other thing you hit on is something that I always noticed, watching New England. How many times did you watch a Patriots game and the team's best player that they were playing did nothing?
Yeah.
Because it was schemed away.
Yeah.
And that's obviously the first thing a lot of people complain about this hire is Belichick ran the defense. And we were talking before we came on, and you have some thoughts on, after hearing some things.
Yeah.
And you don't think that's necessarily true.
Yeah, I really don't. Obviously, as the head coach, no matter where you are, if you're an offensive guy, you're going to have a say in what the offense does. You're going to have a say in what the defense does. The coordinators meet with the head coach every week. And so Jim Knowles, like he did with Ryan Day after the Oregon game, goes into the office, meets with the head coach, and Coach Day says, "Hey, I don't like this. Let's try to do something like this." Jim Knowles goes out and does it. Like, those are things, like, the head coach, that's their job. It's a coordinator's job to execute the head coach's vision as to what they think we need to be doing to win the game. Bill Belichick obviously had an influence on the defense, but I just today, obviously kid was sick. I got a chance to come home and, just did a lot of research and listening to different podcasts. He's got a podcast. Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia had a podcast that they do together that's called The Coach. I would encourage all of us who are listening to this, go look that up on YouTube. It's really good. You get to hear how smart and how intellectual Matt Patricia is. And the other thing that you see is that Bill Belichick truly trusts this guy. I can almost guarantee you Matt Patricia would have followed him to North Carolina had Bill Belichick not had a son that's already coached a year in college that went with his dad, right? And so I truly think that's the only reason why Matt Patricia is not at North Carolina. And so there are just some really good things. There's the Game of Names, I think is the name of the podcast, with Julian Edelman. They went to a deep dive of the top games that Matt Patricia coached in, and he gave like a defensive coordinator's like summary of what it looks like going into the week. And it was so detailed, and like he brought his playbooks, he brought his handwritten like game plans that he put together in a binder that's like this thick. And it's like, why do that if somebody else is calling the defense?
Yeah.
Why do that listen, I've been there. I've been a coordinator on a staff where the head coach said, "Hey, I'm the one that's going to be doing this. This is what you're going to run." I can tell you, I put a lot of time in when it came to coaching my guys and making sure that they're ready. But when it came to like building the game plan sheet, I knew for a fact that the head coach was going to make me run what he wanted to run. So like, all right, man, just give me what you want me to call and I'll go call it. I'm not going to waste all my time trying to put this together if I'm just going to run the things that you want me to run. And so for him to do those things, that just solidifies for me, and we could be wrong. This is just an assumption, but this just solidifies for me that Patricia was truly the guy who was calling the shots on the defense. And I think that relationship with Bill Belichick was a real one. I think it was a very authentic, trusting relationship. And that's one of the things I really think allowed, Matt Patricia to really take control of that defense with Bill Belichick being the head coach.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. And obviously, one of the things I read, I think it was Chimdi Chekwa, had said, I've talked to a lot of guys that have played for Patricia, be it New England or be it Detroit. Half of the guys loved Matt Patricia, thought it was a great experience. Half of the guys hated him and thought it was a bad experience. He goes, you pick which half played where.
Yep.
And so that's always the complaint, is everybody saying, well, my God, when he was in Detroit, the culture was terrible. Detroit wasn't good.
No.
Losing doesn't help culture.
No.
And Bill Belichick obviously does help culture.
Yeah.
So in this scenario where Matt Patricia is coming to Ohio State, Ryan Day is not going to let one guy come in here and screw it up.
Nope.
If we're 6 weeks into this thing and this experiment's going off the rails, co-defensive coordinator OG Walt is going to take over everything.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying Ryan Day is going to fire Matt Patricia 6 weeks into the season, but his role will be extremely diminished. Say he's in the box, which he was a sideline guy in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I think what this boils down to, and I guess, before we dive into that, with this move came OG Walt is co-DC and Coach G is passing game coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
As we talked about with Heartline and, even in Coach Key, this is the progression that you're seeing. Ryan Day probably sat down with Walt and Coach G and he goes, guys, we're this close to you guys being able to run the show on the defense. But given, what we've had with Knowles, where Knowles was not a recruiter.
Yeah.
Knowles was not the rah-rah in-your-face guy. We really need you to focus on recruiting and learning how to be the head coach of the defense.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Ryan Day is going to be able to, and this was actually something that I heard, I think it was Berm say, or Bill Landis. Ryan Day is not going to be able to be as hands-on with the defense this year.
Yeah.
As he was this past year, because you now have a little bit younger offensive staff. You don't have Chip Kelly as your head coach of the offense, and you have a new quarterback.
Yeah.
So Ryan Day is going to be all over that.
Yeah.
So I think I think Matt Patricia has way more to gain than the Buckeyes do from this thing. But I think it can be a win-win for both.
Yeah, man, I really do. And I know we've talked about my experience on here of being a head coach, but I've been in those spots where, I've been a part of programs where the previous coach had won a lot, and then the staff that was following up didn't, right? And so people always blame the culture. If you want to take it to a much more micro level here in Marion, Ohio, take a look at the way Marion Harding was perceived under Coach Hinton versus the way it was perceived under Coach Brady. If you ask me, Coach Brady is like my second dad. I love Coach Brady. I also love Coach Hinton as well, but they look at things differently. Even though Coach Brady won games, it's still viewed differently, right? You look at my time as head coach. Our culture was strong, but we weren't winning games. And so what are people going to say about what we were doing? Well, maybe the culture wasn't as strong, or maybe, the players weren't buying in, right? That's what people are going to say if you are not winning. Bottom line, that's just the way that it is. And it's an unfortunate thing, because I do think oftentimes there are situations where some coaches get a bad rap because of the winning. The winning's not happening, but everything else might be going great, right? The in-game issues may be there, but the culture building and the numbers and things like that are there. And so those are things that we really need to pay attention to. And you bring up such a good point. The Lions sucked before Dan Campbell. The Lions and the Browns were the worst franchises in football, right? And so when you're taking that over, it's hard to change a culture. And you were trying to mimic what your boss did, what Bill Belichick did. Okay, I will tell you this, and this is again from my experience. I resigned in 2021 as the head coach of Marion Harding. I had a 7-22 record as the head coach of my dream job, and that sucks. that is a terrible record. All right, but there was still some really good things that happened during that year, those 3 years, and it also led to what I think a senior class really just taking the next step the following year and making a playoff berth. but I still wasn't the best version of myself in those 3 years. What did I need? I needed to get away from Marion for a little bit. I needed to go out there and experience some different things. And I went to Findlay, and Findlay legitimately changed my life, man. Like when I left here in Marion, I was a broken individual. I was like, I'm 7-22, 7-23 as a head coach. This was my freaking dream, and I failed, right? And so I went to therapy. I humbled myself. I go to Findlay, and it changed my life. I mean, changed my life drastically. If you ask anybody that's coached with me since then, you ask my wife, you ask my family, I'm not the same person I was in 2020, in 2021. I'm a much better coach. Matt Patricia went through that same exact thing. He failed at what his dream was, and he got humbled. And that's not an easy thing to accept. And if you look and listen to his interviews and watch him talk, like you see a guy who's been through some stuff, right? He talks about, hey, I had a chance to stick around with the Eagles and I left because I needed to work on me. I needed to get away from this. And so I think we're getting an energized and refreshed Matt Patricia who knows what works now and knows what doesn't work. And in order for me to be successful, I have to lean into this part. I have to forget that part. I need to lean into what I need to do to be successful now. I just want Buckeyes to understand the human side of this as well. I know we're irrational and we're the lunatic fringe, and we probably won't listen to that. But I think we need to understand when you have lost what is your dream, it changes you. It changes you, and you become better for it if you put in the work in. And I think Matt Patricia's done that, man. I really do. Maybe I'm just a big fan of Julian Edelman, but I listen to that podcast and it's like, man, like I see a guy who knows it didn't work out for whatever reasons, and now he knows he's got another shot at making this thing work. And I think we're going to get the best version of Coach Patricia at Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a whole lot of things right there. So we may digress here now because you got me fired up. No head coach is ever going to throw his staff or his players under the bus.
Absolutely.
Your tenure at Harding is a perfect example of like you nailed it. Obviously, I was one of the probably first 15 people that knew you got the Harding job. Yeah. So I obviously have paid very close attention to all things Harding football.
Yeah.
Your staff was great guys, but you and your staff were all really young in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And if you look at that staff, the guys that you had on that staff now, I think everybody that was on that staff are better people.
Yep.
Are better coaches and have taken ginormous strides.
Yeah.
To become better versions of themselves.
Absolutely.
And your culture was great. You still have players that you've hit on it. You see guys come up to you at the gym or in public and talk about Coach Slater, you changed my life. And some of it, again, as a guy who knows a lot of the kids, in that class that became seniors the year after you left, that team went 7-3. It was the kids that did it. The kids took those steps.
Absolutely. It's always the kids, man. Always the kids.
We could do a whole episode on other circumstances of that season, but it was the kids. The kids figured out they had to do it.
Yep.
It wasn't about the guy on the sideline. Just like we've always said, you can't have the X's and O's if you don't have the Jimmies and Joes.
Yeah.
And that senior class was special.
Yeah.
A lot of people forget how good those kids had been for such a long time.
Yeah.
And there was lethargicism. There was attitudes. There were tragic. Those boys dealt with a lot of shit.
They dealt with a lot, man. A lot.
I was talking to a couple of kids today that were in that class, and we were just kind of revisiting things and rehashing things, and one of them just looked me dead in the eye. He goes, "Man, people forget how good we were."
Dude, that team was those kids were so talented. But again, like you said though, with the Johnnies and the Joes, man, when you're taking over a not so good NFL franchise, like it takes time to build. Like
Yes.
Dan Campbell just didn't turn into, one of the best coaches in the league overnight. Like he had to build it. Bill Belichick, same way when he took over New England. Like those are Pete Carroll, all these guys. You got to start somewhere and you've got to build. And so you've got to get the right pieces in there. But I think he's got some of the best talent coming into Ohio State, man, and just that type of stuff just reinvigorates you, man. Like it just makes you want to be a part of whatever it is that can. You just feel like you're a part of something special, man. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just being Homer Burm like he's got. Maybe I'm just being Homer Coach Slate. But I just think he's going into a great situation.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like the 2020 year. I believe that was the year the Lions fired Patricia. And you had, he's a defensive guy. Your defensive starters were terrible. I mean, you had Danny Shelton starting for you. You had 31-year-old Jamie Collins. I mean, there wasn't a guy on that defense that would have probably started anywhere else. The offense, they were a little younger. You had Taylor Decker, who's obviously still great. Frank Ragnow. You had TJ Hawkinson. Stafford threw for 4,000 yards.
Yeah.
But your leading running back was a shell of himself, Adrian Peterson, who had 604 yards. He was 35 years old.
I forgot.
And your starting wide receivers were Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. Yeah. I mean, so let's make no mistake about it. He wasn't rolling with Dan Campbell's Lions.
No.
Just like Ohio State fans, I'm going to call it now. Texas is going to come in here and score, let's say, 24 points week one. This isn't going to be the same defense we just watched beat Notre Dame and Texas.
Yeah.
In Oregon and Tennessee. You're going to lose like 8 guys that started. Yeah. So we're not going to be the number one defense, and that's okay. You don't have to be. So it's going to be interesting to see. And then, real quick on the recruiting side of it, he's not going to have to recruit because your defensive coaching staff are dogs when it comes to recruiting. They'll be fine. You come on campus, sit down. And I think along those lines, it sounds like he met with Caleb Downs before he was offered the job or accepted the job.
Yeah.
And Caleb's in. I saw Albert Hill was talking about it.
Yeah.
The buzz is there.
Yeah.
So who knows what it's going to be? It's February 13th. We can't predict what's going to happen with it. But I think the upside is higher than the low.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, man. And I think you bring up such a good point with the recruiting. Like you said, like he's not going to be asked to do, be out on the road all the time. Jim Knowles was not a recruiter at all. As a matter of fact, the Tackett Curtis and the other guys that he actually led the recruitment for, we didn't get. Yeah, we didn't get. And so Jim Knowles was not brought in to be an ace recruiter. He was surrounded by ace recruiters.
Yep.
I think they're going to do the same thing with Matt Patricia, but I also think Matt Patricia will be able to, when he does go on the road, hey, I'm wearing my 3 Super Bowl rings.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
There are things that Matt Patricia is going to be able to do that will work in his favor. He's going to be able to talk about all those great players that he worked with. He's going to be able to say when he's recruiting safeties, like, hey, I took Patrick Chung and made him into a Patriot or helped develop him into a Patriots Hall of Famer, right? Nobody expected Patrick Chung to be as great as he was with them, but he was fantastic. Hey, I maximize all the talent that I get. I had Julian Edelman playing slot nickel for us on defense at times because he was just a stud athlete, and I felt confident putting him out there. Like those are things that he's going to be able to tell recruits, and they're going to listen and hear like, oh, okay, this guy's he's going to do whatever it takes to win and put me in the best spot to help the team and help me get to Sunday, right?
Exactly.
And so, I do think there's a side of this that could be really good in recruiting, but he's not going to be out on the road, being that ace. he's a legitimate rocket scientist, and so they're going to allow him to be that. And so, we talked about it yesterday. Was this or the other day? Was this our first choice? No. Out of left field. I wouldn't have gone this way, but the more and more I research and look it up and see how his scheme fits with what we have coming back and just the talent we have, I really do think this could work out. I really do. No matter who we hire, there's going to be that risk of it not working. But I do think this could work, man. I do think we're going to get the best version of Coach Patricia.
Yeah, and somebody, I can't think of who I was listening to, we've always talked about C.J. Hicks as the edge rusher. Arvell Reese played with his hand on the ground.
Yeah, when he first got to Columbus.
Yeah, so something to monitor at a position that's kind of lacking some depth.
Yeah.
Because Patricia has shown that incline to do what it takes. So we'll see. You brought up old Jimmy Knowles, and real quick to kind of transition to our next subject. Everybody listening to this needs to go listen to the Denzel Burke interview with Bryant Browning and Chimdi Chekwa. Larry Johnson was the dude who stood up to Jim Knowles.
Okay.
And listening to Denzel Burke talk, you basically realize Knowles wanted to stick to his guns.
Yeah.
And Larry Johnson said, we need to do this in order to be effective. And voila. Really, really good pod with those guys. Believe in the Buckeyes.
Yeah,
BLEAV.
Yeah.
So Larry Johnson, still in limbo. We don't know what's going on with Larry. The ball's in his court if he wants to hang it up or if he wants to continue to coach. I don't know what to expect. I could very well see him hanging it up now that Jack and JTT are gone, because he told those guys that he would stay there while they were there.
Yep.
But what do you feel, is going to happen and ramifications of it?
This one's tough, man, because, like we said earlier on the opening drive this week, LJ's earned the right to decide when he goes, right? And it's kind of it does put Coach Day in a little bit of a bind, but at the same time, this guy is, devoted. He's been here since 2012. He's built so many first rounders and developed and built these awesome relationships and, the rushmen, and he just built a culture with the defensive line that you just want to respect, whatever direction he decides to go. I wonder how him and Coach Patricia are going to be able to work together. I do think our defensive line room is going to be more geared towards an odd front based on the personnel that we have. I mean, if you look at our projected starters, Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson, I mean, Caden Curry is a true hybrid. He's not a normal defensive end. He's more of I'm going to go get after the quarterback. And I'm a smaller build, has the ability to drop into coverage and do some different things. And so I just feel like we're more geared towards being an odd front. And I don't know if LJ wants that. And so it'll be interesting to see, does LJ wait the spring and see how it goes? And then potentially okay, I'm going to hang it up. I think that puts Ryan Day even more in a bind if he does that, because now the transfer portal, and so some of those freshmen, the Zion Grady's, the Epis Centilli, however you say his last name, those guys committed to Coach Johnson. And so, do they say, you know what, I'm out. I'm not going to stick around for this. I think that could be an issue if Coach Johnson decides to wait till after the spring. At the end of the day, I do think Coach Johnson's going to stay. I do think he's going to stick around for one more year. But hey, if he decides next week, tomorrow, this is it. I trust Coach Day is going to be able to go pay and get a high-level defensive line coach.
Yeah, I agree. And, obviously we've already made no bones about it, who we think it will be or who we want it to be. We'll see. I think, if that domino falls, then we revisit that. But yeah, I do too. I think he stays. I don't think he wants to put Coach Day in a bad spot. And I think he realizes that. And, kind of like what you almost saw with Chip. As he stepped down, he had already told some of these kids, this is your guy going forward. So we'll see. Hopefully we're done talking coaches, for the year. Transfer portal news, though. Second year in a row that the Buckeyes have a kid withdraw his name from the portal and come back.
Yeah.
And it's a guy we both like. I mean, I actually got a text last night that said Jeremy's guy is in the portal. Sam Williams-Dixon is staying. Interesting, because you could look at it a couple of different ways. In today's day and age, obviously, one way you can look at it is, he didn't get the offers he thought he was going to get.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is an Ohio kid, a Central Ohio kid at that, who might have felt a little slighted. You didn't see a lot of touches this year. But, you're now going into a year with no Travion Henderson, no Quinshon Judkins.
Yeah.
You got CJ Donaldson, you've got James Peoples, and really then you've got you and some freshmen.
Yeah.
But, you talked about this kid a lot when he became a Buckeye.
Yeah.
The flexibility, the versatility, he's not just a running back.
No, he's not. And I think he's a very good player. What school was he at? It was in Northeast Ohio somewhere. Then he transferred, smaller school, transferred to Pickerington North. Listen, I think he can play. I think he's a really good player. He flashed in the spring last year. He showed some good wiggle, a good burst. I think adding him, it will be a legit, competition for that running back 3 spot. I do think James Peoples and CJ Donaldson will be 1A and 1B, but I do think you need a little more depth behind them.
Yes.
We talked about TC Caffey. We talked about Rashad Cisse. We talked about the 3 freshmen, right? I think our running back depth was going to be fine. I do think they love Bo Jackson. I think he's a very talented guy. Isaiah West, very talented. Turbo Rogers. Obviously, we know that he's a gadget guy. He's going to be in the slot. He's going to do a lot of different things. But I think Sam Williams-Dixon could be, the true number 3 back, or if it's a 1A, 1B situation, he's a true technically number 2, and he could get some carries similar to what James Peoples got this year. I really do think that he could be that for us. And so, any of the guys that we put in that running back room with Coach Locke, I know that they're going to get developed. I just look at the way that he handled this year with those 2, monsters we had in the backfield and Trey and Quinshon. And I have no concerns about how this running back room is going to be held or how it's going to be supported and dealt with throughout the season. I think CJ Donaldson is getting overlooked a little bit. I think it's a big pickup. He's just a monster. People forget that he was brought in as a tight end at West Virginia. He's got 2,000 career rushing yards. I think he's going to be featured a little bit more. James Peoples is an absolute dog. We've talked about and raved about him. But Sam Williams-Dixon, I think that's somebody that we just under the radar could be a big time contributor for us this year. So I'm glad he's back, man, because I hate to see a freshman leave after 1 year. Maybe was looking for a better opportunity, more money, whatever. I'm just glad he's back because I think he could play for us. If it's not this year, definitely in the future, man. He's a good football player.
Yeah, I think you hit on something big. They love Bo Jackson, and it sounds like he's bulked up.
Yeah.
Turbo Rogers isn't going to be there till the summer. It's going to be very interesting to see because now you have a lot of depth in that room. But yeah, that's exciting stuff too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the developments for the week. We said we'd hop on here if there were some developments. Looking ahead, hopefully things are kind of slow now.
Yeah.
You never know. It's college football. We will, dive into. I know you want to circle back through, kind of close up the season, go over some plays. We're gonna break down the class of 25, who we think can do some stuff. Introduce you guys to the class of 26. We'll obviously talk some NFL draft. Try to get our guy Jake back on here when we get closer to that.
Yeah.
15 Buckeyes invited to the combine. That came out today.
That's pretty cool, man.
Looking for that record of most draft picks.
That's pretty cool.
So that's pretty cool. You know, we might talk some hoops if they make the bracket, which I think they will at this rate.
I think they will, man. 82% chance right now.
Yeah, and they got to get a couple more dubs, and they'll be scooting there. Good times, though. Public service announcement. We are probably going to be absent from Apple for the foreseeable future. There's just some red tape stuff there that doesn't make a whole lot of sense yet, but we're going to try something new. This episode, we're going to post it a little bit later, and you can also use YouTube Music, and then, obviously we'll still be on Spotify. So kind of some public service housekeeping stuff there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, our guy Jake's dealing with some stuff, prayers to him and his family.
Yeah.
But we do want to do that high school football episode we talked about.
Yeah.
And we're going to have some Marion high school football news. High school football is in true form,
Yeah, man.
We cover all things, high school football. The Marion Harding head coaching job came open. That's going to be interesting to monitor.
Yeah.
There's that. And obviously the spring practices. So, we're always going to have stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Dive into the autograph world a little bit. Other than that, what do you have, that you want to throw out there, kind of housekeeping stuff, since we don't get a chance to do that a lot?
Yeah, man. The Apple situation, like you said, it's a bunch of red tape stuff. And so we just kind of, with Carson, our guy Carson, we kind of looked at the analytics of things, Spotify, YouTube, were really where most of our viewers and listeners were coming from. And so, we're just going to try to go that route. YouTube Music's kind of new, so we're going to see how that works. But yeah, man, that's really it. This has been great. The graphics and stuff have been awesome from Carson.
Yes.
And so we're going to continue to try to keep growing this thing. The big thing that we really need you guys to do is continue to share our stuff. Our subscribers have gone up. I think we're at 156 or 157. We want to get to 200 as soon as possible. So continue to share, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, X, wherever. Just make sure you guys share our stuff. This has been fun. It's going to continue to get better. And we want to provide, a good product for you guys, man. So like, subscribe, share, do all those things for us. And we greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like I said, we got a whole multitude of subjects that we'll sprinkle in there. Like I said, and with that, I think we'll wrap it up for tonight. Again, we are brought to you courtesy of the Barn Baseball and Softball Academy, Cornerstone Home Remodeling, and, honestly, you guys, because if, we weren't getting feedback on this thing, we'd be sitting here talking to ourselves. So with that said, we will see you guys at the beginning of the week for an opening drive. We'll see, what kind of scuttlebutt comes out if we, stick to our schedule, record Sunday. If we start to hear some smoke of something going on, we always try to make sure that we're here to give you our thoughts. So, we will get that done, and we will see you guys next week.